Hi, welcome back to Happy Hour here on the Craft Beer Runner. Today I have my friend Chris Gilbertson, who's all the way out in Germany, even though he resides in Santa Monica. We'll get into that real soon on what's he doing out there. Chris, you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, my name is Chris, and like Jack said, I live in Santa Monica, but at the moment, ich lebe in Berlin. I'm living in Berlin for about 5 months, and if I told you it is for work, you could probably guess I come from Southern California, which means I'm in film production, and that's why I'm here. So I've been here in Berlin for about 7 weeks now, I think, and I should be home in time for Thanksgiving, but yeah, we can talk more about that or whatever else you have on your mind.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, Chris and I met through running. As most of my friends I've met recently or in the past 10 years. And he also officiated my wedding down in Costa Rica coming up on 2 years now. So
Yeah.
Awesome. What are you drinking today?
Okay. Yeah, let me bust it out here. So today I'm drinking, let's get it up here. Rostocker in American, but Wallstocker Pils, which is a Pilsner from the town of Wallstock, which is about a 2.5 hour drive north of here on the Baltic Sea. So it is, I did a little bit of research on it. I mean, it is manufactured, the brand is owned by a major brewery, but one thing I've found out about Germany is there are a lot of sort of regional beers, and so it looked good, and so I picked up a case of it. The way that you buy beer here is very different than the way we buy it at home. What are you drinking?
Yeah, so for my local brewery, block away from me, Good Society, it is the Bridge Out Stout. It's a oatmeal stout, 5.5%. It's picked up yesterday. And for transparency, it is currently noon here in the Pacific Northwest on a Friday. Yes. It's a little later on a Friday night for you, but yes, I will be drinking a stout at noon on a Friday. That's being unemployed. Cheers,
so yeah,
Chris.
9 p.m. for me. I'm going to start here while this one settles. Yeah, it's 9 p.m. here, Friday night in Berlin. Culturally, the relationship that Germany has with beer is so different than we have in America. And in America, we love our beer. But here, one of the first things that you notice if you're just out and about is that everybody seems to be walking around at any time of day carrying a big bottle of beer. And I mean, like anyone from age 16 and up has got, like we would carry a water bottle. They're carrying a beer around.
Oh. And so, I mean, speaking of cultural differences, right now in the middle of a pandemic, I know we've been talking prior to this. Yeah. Things are a little bit different in Germany. First off, before we get to that, so there currently is travel restrictions to the EU, but you were able to, your production company was able to get a permit, and then you had to quarantine, correct?
Yeah, it was actually very complicated because we filmed the first month of filming in San Francisco in February, came back to LA. We had 2 or 3 weeks to wrap San Francisco and then pack up and leave for Berlin. Our production got shut down. Some of us were on the way to the airport when we got shut down in March and delayed, and we were lumped in with the other, I don't know how many tens of millions unemployed during that period of time. When we did finally get the green light to start filming again and come to Berlin, a small group of us got here in Berlin, and then there was another group of us, like sort of a second wave coming 2 weeks later, but the travel restrictions went into effect right before then. And so those of us who did manage to travel after the travel restrictions were only able to do it with a 16-page document from the Federal Labor Bureau of Germany saying that we were essential because our production's spending like $200 million in their economy. So yeah, it was very. A producer had to go to LAX and spend an hour and a half with Lufthansa management before we even arrived to make sure that we could get on the plane to get here. Once we got in, and this is partly a production thing and partly a requirement of the German government, once we landed in Germany, we had to quarantine or really self-isolation. We weren't locked up or anything like that. We just couldn't go to work or anything like that. We get COVID tested every Monday, every Thursday. We have results within 24 hours. Once we're done with our quarantine, then we can go to work. And then at work, everything is divided up into pods. So you wear a lanyard that says where you're supposed to work, and people who work over there can't mix with you. So they try to manage mixing as much as possible. And then, of course, I work on set. We all wear masks all the time. There's a whole, they call themselves the COVID force, a whole team of people who just basically follow us around and disinfect everything. I mean, we're the safest people, not just in Berlin, but probably in the world right now, as far as the pandemic goes, which makes me feel great just because medically I'm, one of those high risk kind of people. But yeah, production wise, they're handling it really well. But the German government seems to have a pretty good grasp on managing it also.
Yeah, well, my wife Karen and I were lucky enough to see you earlier this year. I think was it January or February when you made that road trip up the coast.
I made a few road trips. I think I actually saw you guys in October.
It was October
when I did the big driving road trip, and then I did make a few more trips up there to visit my folks, but.
Time doesn't mean anything right now.
Oh no, not at all. I'm completely confused by it.
Right. So Berlin is a major city, and you're saying how aside from certain things like maybe masks indoors and some social distancing indoors, it doesn't necessarily it feels a little more normal there than it does in San Monica. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes you forget. I think for all of us now, the whole mask thing and washing your hands frequently is so normal that when you look around, when you're out and about and people, when I say people riding bikes, I mean like the European version, like it's more bicycles than you've ever seen in your life. People riding bikes, using public transportation, nothing is closed. Restaurants and all that are open. You kind of forget because the masks and the sanitizing your hands has become so normal that it does feel normal. I think that Berlin, I don't know exactly, but I think that Berlin's a city of about 3 million. I did ask when I finished my quarantine, which wasn't here in Berlin, it was in Potsdam, which is like 30 minutes away, which is a really cool town. When the driver was bringing me here to Berlin to my apartment, I was asking him about the German attitude towards the pandemic and all the rules and things like that. And Germany, I think, has had a total of 10,000 or 12,000 deaths. So pales or nothing in comparison really to what we have, although it's 10,000 people, but certainly small numbers and smaller rates of infection than what we've experienced. The difference, I think, has been that culturally, they are, generally speaking, a pretty compliant group of people. The government says you have to do this, and they're like, okay, we do that. They don't necessarily agree, and that's starting to show. Over the past month, there have been 2 huge rallies not far from here at the Brandenburger Gate, anti-mask rallies, which I affectionately refer to as super spreader rallies. And there's a spike in the numbers, not surprisingly. But yeah, it's just a different attitude. We're born cowboys in America, and we, it serves us really well in world wars, but not so well in a pandemic.
Right. And you were also talking about just walking around is a little bit different experience than most U.S. cities in terms of how spread out sidewalks are, and you were mentioning more bicycles and cars and things like that, correct?
Yeah. I mean, in my experience, I was in Potsdam for a couple weeks. I've been in Berlin for a few weeks. I've visited a few other towns around. Certainly, it's just different because these cities were built long before, modern transportation. But yeah, it's a more pedestrian friendly environment for the most part, at least the places that I've visited. So yes, restaurants are open, and yes, there is inside dining, but it's not really necessary. And some places don't even offer it because they can seat 100 people outside without crowding. It's just sort of built that way, like al fresco dining is part of the thing. So yeah, it does feel much more normal. I mean, than being home in Santa Monica where the weather's beautiful and the people really go out of their way to avoid breaking social distancing rules, but still they decide that they need to put up barriers and close the beach because somehow if you're all alone in the middle of the ocean, you're going to infect the planet or something.
And so one other thing Chris has been working on recently before heading over to Germany was he's actually started his own YouTube channel, That Hippie Pilot. Chris is a man of many careers and hobbies. I know Chris from running, from endurance running, mountain running, adventuring. But Chris also used to be in the Marines as a pilot, and he has, after a long break from that, he has rekindled that passion for flying. So he's back in school. Chris, you're back in school, correct? To get your bachelor's in aviation?
To get my bachelor's in aviation because perfect timing. The entire aviation industry's cratered, so that's when you jump in. No, so just to clarify, yes, I was in the Marines. I wasn't a pilot in the Marine Corps, but I did start flying during that time.
Okay.
So yeah, I started flying in 1993, and there have been fits and starts, and I've recently gone back to it, and I'm like, cannot tell you how much I love it. And it's not on the channel yet, but I have already gone flying in Germany, and so that's upcoming for my channel. That Hippie Pilot is my adventures of actually flying an airplane in Germany, and next weekend, fingers crossed, I'll be flying all by myself in a tiny little airplane out of Germany into other countries in Europe. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, so, I'll put a link to your channel, Chris, so people any interested in aviation can follow you there. Speaking of scenery, because being up in the air, you get tons of great scenery.
Yeah.
As a ultra runner, adventurer, I've been asking recently my friends what their most scenic beer experience was.
My most scenic beer experience? Actually, you know what? It wouldn't be, scenic to me, and it's something that you can relate to, but it's not in the mountains. In fact, for our running group, it's almost laughable that this thing is called a hill. But in the Boston Marathon, Heartbreak Hill, which is legendary for breaking runners, but if you're a mountain ultra runner, you're wondering where it is. It's not I'm gonna get hate for this, but it's really not a hill. It's really not a hill. Although I will say that the point that it comes in the race is about mile 18, where you just realize, oh shit, I still have 8 miles to go. It didn't really seem that far. That mile 18 to 20 is always kind of crappy in a marathon. But probably my favorite scenic beer was running the Boston Marathon, as you recall, in cutoff jeans and the whole thing. Right before heading up Heartbreak Hill, somebody there with a sign saying last beer before Heartbreak Hill. So standing at the bottom, watching all these people with dread, like getting ready to go up the hill, chugging a beer at the bottom. Honestly, I don't even know what it was, but it was delicious. And that turned out to second fastest race ever. Stopped for a beer, Heartbreak Hill, ran it in jeans, everything. It couldn't have been.
Jeans or jorts?
See, I protest the name jorts because in my mind jorts are like manufactured, like they've got stitching and everything like that at the bottom. I'm talking like my uncles in the 70s cut off jeans, like cut so short that the pockets hang out the bottom. So those are cutoffs.
I think my most memorable mid-race beer was at JFK 50 miler in Maryland.
Yeah.
And that race is, you start on the Appalachian Trail, although it's a paved part of the Appalachian Trail, and then you go down to the towpath and you run a marathon essentially along the river right across the way from West Virginia, where for 26 miles it's dead flat, and you just hear the shotguns coming from across the river in West Virginia, and that's it for marathon. And you come off there, and you have 8 miles to go on the road to the finish line. And right as you're coming off the towpath, I remember outside this house, right at the beginning of the road, there was a sign that said "free beers and hugs." And I walked up to the two guys there. I was like, "I'll have one of each." And I don't remember what I drank, but I wasn't having a good day. But that, the hug and the beer helped me get to the last 8 miles. I think it was my slowest 50 miler especially given the lack of elevation on that course. It was a rough day, but So not scenic, but memorable beer. That's probably my most memorable race beer.
And you've got a much more storied history than me of race beers.
My stuff isn't race beers; it's race hard liquor. I do hard liquor during races. So let me get to the typical 4 questions we ask. So the first one is, what is your first experience that you can remember with beer?
All right. Well, a first specific experience, I think that most of us, like when we were little kids, probably had a sip of our dad's beer or whatever. But we moved to Alaska in 1984, and I want to say the following summer, like before my freshman year, my dad and I and some neighbors, we went on a long, like a 5-day canoeing trip through a series of lakes. And, like Central Alaska, the sun doesn't go down in the summer. It gets really warm. Like mid-90s to low hundreds. So we went out there for 5 days, and when we got back to the truck, loaded up our canoe, we hop in there, and my dad reaches under the seat of the truck, and he pulls out a can of beer, like a can of Coors, that's been in the truck for like 5 days in triple-digit temperatures, and he pops the top off it, and he just starts chucking this beer. And then he looks at me, and he's like, "Man, there is nothing I love more than a good hot beer." And he's like, "You want some?" And he hands it over to me, and I'm like, "It's cool, I can, right?" So I do. I take a drink of it, and I'm like, "This is like boiling piss. This is the worst thing that I've ever tasted in my life." I didn't have another beer until I was 24 years old. It totally worked.
Scared straight.
It was completely by design. Yeah, he's like, "I'm going to take one for the team here."
Let's be fair. Coors Light, when it's cold, it tastes like cold piss. So it's
yeah. But when it's hot, when it's hot, it's like it's concentrated, like mature piss that's been barrel aged.
I'm glad we're on the Craft Beer Runner channel and not the Macro Beer channel, because I would get some hate comments for this. Next question I typically ask is, what is your favorite style of beer?
A Pils or a lager. I generally prefer a beer to be kind of light and crisp. That being said, to me, a Guinness is like a glass of chocolate milk. I really do enjoy that sometimes, but generally speaking, and I guess that works to my benefit because here in Germany, the Pils is a favored style of beer, and there's a variety. Like I mentioned, cultural differences. I was telling you before that it's not just a clever turn of phrase saying that beer is cheaper than water. It's literally cheaper than water here. So when I went up to Rostock a few weeks ago, and went swimming in the Baltic Sea clothed, which is remarkable because about 40% of the people are not wearing anything. I decided I'm going to buy my beer the way the Germans do, which is to just buy a case of it. And a case is 20 1-liter bottles. So a liter, gosh, I'll have to look at this again. Oh, no, 20 half-liter bottles. So it's about 18 ounces. It's a little bit more than a pint. 20 pints for €11. That's about $12.50. At a restaurant, a bottle of water this size would be like $8. That's a great comparison. I mean, what do we pay in the States if we buy a decent beer at a restaurant or a bar? We probably pay between $6 and $8. That's what you pay for water at a restaurant. They don't serve you water like we do in the States. You order it. That's about what it costs. But a half-liter beer at a restaurant or a bar is still like less than €3, less than $3.
Yeah, I can see why people drink a lot more of the beer than the water there. So
yeah.
So you're in Germany. You've been there for 6 weeks, I believe, or so.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. What have you found a favorite brewery? Maybe a favorite brewery or two that you like. Maybe a favorite beer.
Yeah. It's not even German, I guess. There's a little in Potsdam, which it's about 30 minutes away from here, but it's really close to the studio. And so I think all of us that were quarantined there have found favorite little restaurants and bars in Potsdam. So just this afternoon after we wrapped, we went there and ate. But I found a little hipster bar called 11 Line think of like a hipster artsy coffee shop, but also a bar because Germany, right? There will be beer there. And they turned me on to a really good Czech Pilsner called Staropramen, which is really delicious from Prague. That's probably my favorite. I really do like the Rostocker. And then kind of a very common beer here in Berlin would be Radeberger or Radeberger. Yeah, I haven't found any that I really don't like, and I've actually tried quite a few variety because when we go to the checkout stand at the grocery store in the States, that's like peanut M&Ms and a Snickers. Here, it's a cooler with just a variety of single big, anywhere between a half liter and a liter bottle of beer for like $1.20. So why would you not buy some beer in the checkout line?
And the last question I have for you is, when you're back home in the States, one or two of your favorite breweries or beers?
Well, Golden Road, probably for the atmosphere as much as anything. But honestly, I mean, I'm turned 49 this year. When I was in my 30s, I tried really hard to like cool beers. And then in my late 30s, early 40s, I realized that I could drink Bud Light all day long and still go out and go running and be athletic and things like that. So yeah, my tastes in beer have certainly changed, but I'm also a sucker for advertising, to be honest. And so
it's funny because I had Anders, our friend, on the show a couple weeks ago, and
yeah,
he's a marketing guy, so he's a visual guy, and so he loves. Like he's drawn to labels and to marketing and all that stuff. And
I'm a nostalgic kind of person, so I could not tell you, and I'm being honest with you, I couldn't tell you if Miller High Life is a good tasting beer or a bad tasting beer because I have such a strong nostalgic association with it, and I love the label that for some reason I think I pop one open, I drink it so fast I don't know the difference. Yeah.
So this is the Craft Beer Runner, and Chris's 3 favorite American beers are all macros. Golden Road used to be a craft beer. Got purchased by a large corporation, but I like Golden Road, and they have, when you're in the airport at LAX, it's one of the few good options of food and beer. And before they got purchased, I used to love their tap house and in the eastern part of Los Angeles. So yeah, I mean, like that's the thing. Just because a major corporation buys a craft beer doesn't mean sometimes the beer still is good. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I would. Yeah, for sure. I mean, they were purchased because they made something great that was very successful.
It was popular,
yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's a craft beer channel, and I like some crap beer. But think of it like a CNN, where they've always got to have that one like Republican viewpoint come on and.
Well, okay, so you live in Santa Monica. When you go to Father's office, what do you drink?
You know what? I don't go to Father's office that often. You know why? Why do you think it is?
Because you want to make changes to your hamburger?
Yeah, they don't believe in ketchup, and I don't believe in that.
Chris, thank you for coming on. I know that doing the time zone, the 9-hour difference is fun for scheduling. I know you're probably tired from all your shooting. Everyone, please go check out that Hippie pilot here on YouTube. Also, please subscribe here to my channel for more beer interviews for now. And then when COVID is eventually over, traveling to drink some beer, maybe some other fun things. Like this video, and we'll see you next week for happy hour. Chris, cheers.
Cheers, and thanks for having me. And when I get back in a couple of months, I'm going to fly up there and we'll do a little collab. We'll keep the drinking on the ground. And okay, yeah, we won't mix them. We'll collaborate.